What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to another edition. I think we're up to episode 43, lifetime, holy moly, of the Winging It podcast. Welcome, everyone. I'm Andrew, joined by Ali. Unfortunately, Alex cannot be with us tonight, but we are bringing in some reinforcements. You heard him almost probably exactly a year ago for this same exact purpose. He's rocking his Tyrese Maxey shirt right now because, as we know, there's so much more than just football happening right now, especially in Philadelphia, as we're getting ready for maybe the Celtics. I don't know. Could be the Hawks. Not really quite sure anymore. But anyway, joined all the way from Jacksonville, Florida, everybody, Colin Taylor. Colin, thank you for joining us, because I don't know about the rest of you. I feel like I know completely minimal amounts of college information to this point. I know a couple names, but first and foremost, man, thank you for coming on with us. Are you ready for the draft? What has this been like? Have you been working at this for months in preparation, or was this a thing 3 days ago? You're like, all right, I should probably get some names in order here.
Well, first off, thank you for having me back. I appreciate it. I am always looking forward to talking on stuff like this. And Ali, it's a pleasure to meet you. I did not have the pleasure last time, so I'm glad that we have another fresh face on the Winging It pod.
Ben Salem, baby. Ali, another.
That's right. Temple, all Temple connected.
Temple,
too.
Ben Salem. That's
nice
right.
That's right. That beautiful thing. But you know what, Andrew? I look forward to the draft. I can't say I'm like a huge NCAA football watcher. I watch games, but I don't really watch the players until the draft rolls around, because I feel like I'm not really thinking about anything until I know the picks that are in place. So once I can start mocking, that's when I really start to dive deep into the players. This year, with the Eagles not having a slew of picks throughout the whole draft, I have not done a full 1 through 7, but I've done 1 through 3, and we have those 7th round picks, so I have to look at the no-name guys,
Let's be honest. When we're talking about the Eagles draft or getting excited for the preparation, I think everybody is obviously really focused on round 1. There's still a lot of interest that kind of carries into round 2. Round 3, you're like, okay, we can find some diamonds in the rough. Like last year, I think the Eagles drafted Nakobe Dean in the 3rd round, which had a first-round draft value. So he was a very exciting prospect. But once you get after that 3rd round, you're really just starting to kind of just grasp at straws. I think that's the saying. And, seeing if you can get lucky. Ali, I'm going to turn things to you right now. You and Alex just spoke a ton about Jalen Hurts, and obviously I completely share, all of the high regards that you guys. I'm so excited that we have him locked up, how he got the deal done. It's a year ago, we weren't really sure. We thought that we were going to be accumulating a draft pick from the Saints to possibly use on a quarterback. And to be honest, this is a pretty strong quarterback draft. So, the Eagles have 2 picks in the top 10. I mean, I guess my question is, do you think that Bryce Young, Anthony Richardson, CJ Stroud, any of these guys, do you think that, I don't know, if you had the opportunity to take them over Jalen Hurts, would you? Or, I guess these guys on draft day are looked at with higher potential. Do you see these guys having a higher ceiling than the guy that the Eagles have?
I always hold my breath when it comes to draft day, just because there's so many hit or misses that could happen. So many busts that we've heard about. I mean, frankly, let's look at Jalen Reagor. Let's look at JJ Arcega-Whiteside. We have had our own slew of bad decisions within the draft, especially in the 1st round. That's when I get really nervous. Would I pick any of these quarterbacks over Jalen Hurts? No, simply because of the intangibles that Jalen Hurts has shown us. He's a leader. He's a proven leader. The guys are willing to follow him. And it's really difficult to measure something like that in the combine or even in college.
For sure. It was kind of a fluffy question, because I think we all would choose Jalen Hurts seeing what we've seen, which, obviously has far exceeded his 2nd round draft grade, which we all had an issue with when it originally happened. So it's been a very pleasant surprise. Ali, last year I did a little exercise with Colin and Alex, and I always like revisiting the previous year's drafts, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I guess I want to ask you, Ali, do you remember, can you remember the first, time that you started getting into football, you knew what the draft was, and like, do you remember the first Eagles draft pick that you can remember of significance?
100%. It was Donovan McNabb. That was the
Of
first
course,
draft I watched.
of course. Yeah, I mean,
And
what was that? 90,
at
like 99, I think. 1999, right?
99. And I remember I couldn't understand why so many people were booing him. I instantly became a McNabb fan just because I love an underdog story. So this guy was already hated by the city he was going to, and I was like, yeah, this guy just needs to show up and play his heart out. And he did. I mean, McNabb gave us a ton of great memories.
Sure did. And Colin, of course, why did Philadelphia, why were we so outraged? Who was the prize that year that the Eagles passed up on for McNabb?
The prize that they I thought you were gonna ask me something else.
What did you think I
I
was
don't
going to
know.
ask
Tell
you?
me, Andrew. I don't know. Tell me,
It
Andrew.
was a running back from Texas.
Running back.
Loved the
Oh,
weed.
yes, he did.
Run, Ricky, run.
Gosh, run, Ricky, run.
Ricky Williams. That's right.
I wanted to say Reggie Williams. I don't know why. Probably because you said weed, and I was thinking,
Reggie.
Reggie.
Bush.
Reggie
Bushes
Williams,
are
Reggie
green.
Bush, Red. Yes.
So that's a good. So McNabb is definitely the one I remember as well. Let's see. So just to kind of go through a couple of the years since then. So since '99, we'll try to do this in a timely fashion. 2000, Corey Simon, defensive tackle, was our first round pick. Then we took Todd Pinkston in the second round. Probably, he had a career, but was not nothing special. After
He's
a year later,
the
yeah, go.
human stick bug.
He was like, he probably, he's like 6 inches taller than Devontae Smith, and probably still weighs the same amount. Like, it looked like if you flicked
Yeah.
him, he would like crack in half. Then a year later, we draft Freddie Mitchell in the first round. I believe he was out of
Fred
UCLA.
X.
Fred X, that was another fun player. But again, was he first rounder? I don't know about all that. Was anybody else? Correll Buckhalter was drafted in 2001. That was a nice little pick. Then 2002, that's when we just went all out on the secondary. It was Troy Vincent and Bobby Taylor were starting to get phased out, so we drafted Lito Shepherd. We drafted Michael Lewis. We drafted Sheldon Brown. So Michael Lewis and Sheldon Brown were both second rounders. Lito was in the first, and then the third round was Brian Westbrook. That was an awesome draft. Since then, I don't really think that there have been too many good ones, man. If I said some of these names, it would hurt your soul. I mean, 2004, Sean Andrews was looking like he was a great pick until he wanted to get his Michael Phelps on. Let's see. 2007, we took Kevin Cobb in the first round. 2008, the first pick that we took was Trevor Laws, a defensive tackle. Then 2 picks later, we took Deshaun Jackson, but literally didn't. Brian Smith, Mike McGlynn, Quentin Demps, Jack. Oh, I'm going to screw this name. Mike. Just nothing.
That was great. That was
09,
solid.
yeah. 09,
I know
we
exactly what you're
we got Macklin and Shady, so that was a great draft. Nothing in later rounds, but Macklin and Shady were huge. 2010 is when we took Brandon Graham instead of Ali. We'll do a little trivia on you here. We wanted a secondary player, and we passed up on them in order to draft Brandon Graham, and it didn't go over well, but it's ended very well.
Ooh, go for it, Colin.
Go ahead. No, you go for it.
Oh no, I tap out. I don't know.
Justin Blackmon?
It was the wide receiver, right? No, it was Earl.
Oh, you said
Earl
secondary.
Earl Thomas. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know why I was like drawing a blank on his last name. Earl Thomas.
Another Texas guy,
right?
I will say, for the fans, I was 2 when Donovan McNabb got drafted. So I watched the 30 for 30 on Ricky Williams.
Well, that's why, that I felt like it might have just been like a known thing, no matter like.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. But just let it be known, I was 2.
You were 2, and therefore we you were excused. Let's see, 2011, Danny Watkins, the fireman, went in for the first round. 2012, Fletcher Cox, Michael Kendricks in the second round, Vinny Curry, Nick Foles. So solid draft in 2012. The following year, Lane Johnson in the first, Zach Ertz in the second, pretty solid. Then Marcus Smith, Jordan Matthews in 2014, Josh Huff, ooh. 2015 was Nelson Aguilar. Oh, let's see. 2016 was Carson Wentz. 2017, Derek Barnett. I don't know why I took you guys all through this. Anyway, you get the gist. All right. Last year we went Jordan Davis round one. I remember watching it with a couple of our pals. I remember Brian and the Stewart boys, and I remember Alex was livid when we traded, or when we traded up to get Jordan Davis. I think we wanted Kyle Hamilton at the time. Okay, now that I've tried taking us through a very 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 abridged version of Eagles history, let's get into this. We're 10 minutes into the episode. Let's start talking, baby. Colin, first and foremost, let's talk about Bijan Robinson, because he is the sexy name. That is who Alex wants. He's making it very known that Bijan is his choice. I have spoken in the past about my opinion on running back, and how it's just I don't like drafting a running back that high. I'm going to send it to you, Colin. Give me your thoughts on Bijan. Is he a generational talent, and should the Eagles use draft pick number 10 overall on the running back?
There's a lot to unfold with Bijan. Him as a player and him just the position itself with the Eagles. He is the first person on my list. When I have my guys under pick 10, he is the first guy. I just don't want fans to get disappointed if he's not there at 10. I think Falcons could take him. I think there's a few teams ahead of us that could take him, and I think there's teams that would jump into those spots to take a guy like Bijan if they view him as a generational talent. I think he gives me Kenneth Walker vibes from last year. Like, people didn't really talk about Kenneth Walker as much as Bijan because there were a few more running backs sprinkled ahead of him, but he's just that hard runner that can cut any way you need him to go. And I just think it is a luxury to have the pick 10 when you were in the Super Bowl. So I think losing Sanders, that's one factor. And getting I almost called him Bijan Sanders, Bijan Robinson to fill that hole is something that I don't think any fan can be upset with. I don't think any analyst can say that's the wrong move. So that's kind of my thoughts on that. I don't 100% think he's going to be there at 10, and I don't 100% think there's not a team behind us that'll jump us. Also, I don't think Howie's the type of GM to not see a value trade if someone wants to move up to 10 if Bijan is there and we move back a few spots to get another guy that is high on our board. Howie's known for that. And like I said earlier, the Eagles aren't loaded with picks throughout the whole draft. They're not necessarily loaded with picks in the future. So it's not something I see them. It's not going to not cross their mind.
I do
That's
want to
a
say you made it,
that's
yeah. And just real quick, I one quick point that I wanted to make is that you did mention how this is a luxury, and the reality is that this is kind of a pick that we were able to snag from the Saints, and like, you do kind of just have it to use however you choose. Like, it does kind of have this house money type of feel to it. Ali, I apologize for cutting you off. I don't know if you were thinking around the same thing, because it's like you kind of can't lose with this pick because you got it for. It didn't cost you much, and you weren't expecting to be in this high powered position where you can bolster an already very formidable offense. So, Ali, continue your thought.
No, I was going to say it's interesting you point out that we don't have a lot of draft capital in the near future, and Howie has been known to hedge his bets on the future when it comes to draft picks. So you're absolutely right. I wouldn't put it past Howie to take this pick and say, hey, I was holding on to 2 draft picks in case the whole Jalen Hurts experiment didn't work out and we were going to draft a quarterback. But now that it has worked out, I'm willing to place my bets on the future.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that was ultimately the plan with the draft picks. Originally, we thought we'd have maybe 3 draft picks this year, but the way it unfolded, we do not. Another thing I want to say with Bijan, I do think we fall victim to, not us, but, well, yeah, I guess us as Eagles fans fall victim to it, but the media puts us in this situation to kind of fall in love with that number 1 running back when it's a class that's not deep with running backs. They do it with quarterbacks, they do it with wide receivers. And not to say he's not a generational talent, but a lot of people are saying he's the last running back in the first round that's this good since Saquon. Saquon was people were talking about him every Saturday. Bijan Robinson he had a great season, but I just don't know if it translates on the wrong team. I think we're obviously not the wrong team with the offensive line we put together. But another thing that people don't talk about is Roshan Johnson at Texas, who was his backup, who's a big running back. He's like a Derrick Henry built running back. He's another guy that the Eagles could, if they pass up on a first round running back, second round running back, he's a guy in the third round that I think the Eagles could definitely target.
Which would be
So I
like
could drool over. Say it
I
again.
was gonna say that's kind of like another Saquon Barkley, Miles Sanders situation because Miles Sanders played behind Saquon at Penn State, and it was like, well, just because he wasn't the number one running back didn't mean he didn't have a ton of skill himself.
Exactly. And the Eagles right now aren't really built with the way Jalen runs and just the way they ran the ball with their stable of backs last year. It doesn't really feel like we're a team that's going to draft a guy that's a three down back, which that's pretty much what I think a team will use Bijan for. So we might take advantage of that if a team behind us wants something in that realm of player.
Yeah,
I
and
think
I
we
mean,
need to accept though that we need to find a replacement for Miles. Now, Miles, in my opinion, wasn't the best of running backs. He was injury prone. He had a really great season last year, but that doesn't make up for the fact that he had been injured for the last couple of seasons before that. And I think we need to find a solve for him. Do I think Bijan is going to be available at number 10? To be honest, I don't think so. Like the Lions are in need of a running back after Jamal Williams is gone. I would not put it past Josh McDaniels to try to fix his No Sean Moreno mix up when he was when he was on the Broncos and pick up Bijan for the Raiders, right? Like I even if we get to a spot where we figure out, okay, we need a running back and Bijan is our guy, I just don't think he's going to be available at number 10.
Yeah, the Falcons do make a lot of sense. I wonder if the Lions would maybe be dissuaded because they brought in David Montgomery from the Bears, and
Yeah.
and they still have DeAndre Swift. Because I remember being like, that's so weird. Like they clearly will just never give Swift a three down role, which is kind of how I always thought we were going to utilize Miles Sanders. And last year was really the most work that we've ever seen Sanders get. That was the closest thing we've ever seen to him being a three down back. And I can't really remember the Eagles ever, like, when's the last time the Eagles had a straight up three down back? And you look at their, they have some depth. So they brought in Rashad Penny. And I know that the injury worry is always there, but this is running back we're talking about. So if you draft in a rookie, I think the injury worry is also going to be there. So we have Rashad Penny, obviously Kenneth Gainwell's entering year 3, and we re-signed Boston Scott to a very, a very team friendly, contract, a cheaper contract. So, and it looks like Trey Sermon might still also be a part of the team. So it's just for me, it'll always be hard to justify using that number 10 pick. Now, the only thing I can kind of, maybe get on board with is when we're talking about contracts and the way that the Eagles, I guess when you get these running backs on their rookie deals and you can kind of, utilize them while they're young and they're not making a ton of money. And then once they're ready for that big payday, then it's like, nah, I'm good. Go make your money elsewhere. We'll start the thing back up again. So I guess all that to say, with the depth that the Eagles have at running back right now, I feel like it would be very surprising to draft Bijan. So, how do you guys feel about the current depth chart at running back? Colin, I'll start with you. I mean, do you think Rashad Penny is, like, he's no slouch in my book. So I want to kind of know how you feel about our runners.
No, I am not just saying this because I have Rashad Penny for $1 in Dynasty, but he is a guy that has averaged, when starting, over 5 yards a carry with bad offensive lines in Seattle. Seattle feels like my entire life, but definitely the last 5 years has had brutal offensive lines. That's why Russell's not there.
Mm-hmm.
And they definitely improved last year. And with Kenneth Walker, there was no reason for them to bring back Rashad Penny. But I think he's a guy that you brought in on a value deal. You see what you can get with him. He gives me kind of a Jordan Howard feel.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily the player, but just the idea of him coming. But to bring it back to the draft, I think that's another thing with this running back class where it's heavy up front with Bijan and Jahmyr Gibbs, which I think kind of will lean in Howie's favor because he can then pass up on 10. He can use to move up, and if he thinks Gibbs won't be there at 30, he can move up.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Gibbs is a guy that you see on mock drafts anywhere from 10 to into the early second
Yeah.
round. So it really depends on what team you are. And I do think Gibbs fits the Eagles system and what we do with running backs better. He's 5'9", very slight. He's an Alvin Kamara like back where you're not going to see him 3 downs consistently. You're going to see him when you need big plays. You're going to see him all over the place. You're going to see him with other running backs on the field. So I think that's something that I think Howie is probably thinking more than what the media is giving on to, which at this point, mock drafts are crazy.
Yeah.
Seeing like Bucky Brooks' final mock draft, I'm like, how many, what more
7.0 changes 4 times in a day.
At this point, we're just pulling at straws, like you said about the 7th round. That's what we're doing now. We're just trying to create things for people to read, but it is interesting with the smoke screens you see that it seems like Bijan has said he's the pick for the Eagles. The media has said he's the pick for the Eagles. The Eagles haven't shied away from talking about it, that's for sure. So
nor should they. I think the
No.
Eagles kind of know what they're doing, and I think they want to keep playing into his optimal value to see if they can, swap out of their spot. Or Ali, I don't know if how much you've been listening to sports radio at all this week, and again, I don't know how much to take from so much stuff. Like you said, Colin, it's like there's so much crazy conversations. Every mock draft is different. We were a couple days ago, there was a rumor about Derrick Henry getting traded to the Eagles, which I have no idea where that even materialized from. So there is a little bit of this idea that like teams are scared that the Eagles might draft Bijan Robinson because that would just make the offense completely unstoppable, which again, my Madden brain is getting super excited thinking about that. But given that the Eagles have a very strong offensive line, it just, I love the thought of making something great even greater, but I don't know. My first question here is, do you think that there's any truth to other teams actually being afraid that the Eagles could take Bijan and they really think that that would just make us completely unstoppable?
Sure. I mean, is there a truth that we would be a scarier team if we took Bijan? Of course. Do I think that's what would actually make us a scary team? No. We gave up 28 points in the second half in the Super Bowl. I think what would make us more formidable as a team is to shore up our defense, specifically on the linebacker side. Yes, bringing in Bijan, I think would make things interesting, make it exciting to watch our offense play. But I mean, you mentioned Rashad Penny, you mentioned Kenny Gainwell, Boston Scott. Like, I feel super confident. I mean, if you just tell me Kenny Gainwell and Boston Scott, I feel pretty confident in our backfield already.
Isn't that crazy? Because like both of those guys, I mean, what rounds were they drafted? Was Gainwell a 4th rounder, 5th rounder? And
Yeah,
I'm sure
he
Boston
was very
Scott
late.
was super late also. So, all right, let's move on a little bit from running back. As I look at our current depth chart, I'm looking at running back, and I see middle linebacker, literally one player. There's no backup. So just Nakobe Dean at middle linebacker. And then it looks like Nicholas Morrow and Hassan Reddick starting at outside linebacker. But it might be typical for the Eagles just to run 2 linebackers at a time. It is very rare for the Eagles to draft linebacker. I know that they've done it a couple times. I think 2 or 3 years ago we took Davion Taylor. It's just been a very long time since we've seen. I mean, I remember Stuart Bradley, Marcus Smith was obviously a bust, but it's something that we don't do. And looking at some of the mock drafts, it looks like linebackers might not start going until a little bit later. Ali, you said that you saw what name was it? It was Drew Sanders.
Drew Sanders.
And did you see him going at number 10 or at number 30 at that particular mock that you were looking at?
Number 10. So Drew Sanders
Wow.
is the top linebacker prospect in the draft right now. He, the NFL's Next Gen Stats gave him a score of 82, which is their number 2 rank in the 2023 Combine linebacker rank. This guy had a pretty solid Combine outing, and I think he would make our linebacker core pretty stout.
Colin, any insight on Drew Sanders? Is 10 too high to take a linebacker? Would you rather? I don't know. Would you rather? 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 if we're going for defense, what is the argument? Yeah. What are you looking at? Are you looking at linebacker or are you looking at secondary?
I'm definitely not looking at secondary. Secondary is something, even when the Bradbury and Slay stuff was going on, I was like, I'm kind of like how you feel about linebackers in the first round and running backs in the first round. I am not a guy who's taking a cornerback in the first round unless he's Sauce Gardner, Jalen Ramsey,
Mm-hmm.
that type. And not that I don't think the crop of cornerbacks, they said this is a top heavy, they meaning the the experts
Those who
say this is
know.
a top, yes, those who have the inside know, say that it's a top heavy class for cornerbacks, saying maybe 2 3 in the top 12. So we'll see. But no, I'm not. I'm staying away from that. I think we're solid in that end with depth and just talent. I would lean more trenches. The depth of our D line can always be better. I mean, that's what
Yes.
made the Eagles defense so good last year. And although we did lose linebackers in free agency, and I think they kind of had a plan for that. They always seem to go short-term contracts with the linebackers. They never seem to re-sign guys after short-term contracts. So I did like White last year, but I think Nakobe Dean was kind of always a guy who they thought was going to jump right in. Took a little longer than expected, but this year should be a good year. Drew Sanders is a guy that I think is quality talent. I'm not taking him at 10. I don't have many linebackers on my list. Jack Campbell, I think, is like number 2 or 3 ranked. He's from Ohio, another just big, burly white fella.
With a name
Not
like
something
Jack
the Eagles really
Campbell,
draft.
get out of town. Jack Campbell, big burly white guy.
Yeah, they're both. That's just not the Eagles' culture, so to speak. But I think they're both guys that if they fall into the second round, maybe we trade back, something like that. But no, I'm in the camp of staying away from linebacker. It doesn't seem to be a class that's anything to get excited about. But I mean, they're quality guys,
Yeah, and we've talked about this a couple weeks ago.
and they're good people. They're good
And
people.
you know what?
I'm sure.
Overall, they're just great to have in the locker room. They're just great
Yeah.
teammates. They will come over for Sunday dinner, and they will.
Jack is going to be, or Drew, yeah, Jack Campbell is going to be great on Wisconsin.
Jack
Or Wisconsin, Green Bay.
Every time I think of, well, he's not an. Jack Campbell sounds like an offensive. I was thinking he was an offensive lineman, but it's like every time that there's just this big white offensive lineman, it's always like Iowa or like Wisconsin or Northwestern or just like one of these bum
Peter Skoronsky.
Peter Skoronsky.
Northwestern.
Yep. So like I'm looking at the linebacker core. You have I guess Hassan Reddick. I hope they don't use him at linebacker. They should definitely continue to use him as strictly an edge rusher. We have Nicholas Morrow that we brought in on a 1-year deal. Kind of reminded me a little bit of what we did with Kaiser White last year. I'm hoping we can get kind of similar production, same as Nigel Bradham a couple years before that. Kind of like these not very well-known players, but like you start looking at their grades and you're like, okay, these guys can tackle. And TJ Edwards and who else did we just lose? But yeah, those two guys were Kaiser, I just said it. They both exceeded our expectations, so that will be interesting to replace. So you said you're not looking at anybody in the secondary. I've seen a couple mocks so far that had Christian Gonzalez from Oregon. So a couple corners I see are Devin Witherspoon, Christian Gonzalez, Joey Porter Jr. I love these these juniors, like you're talking about being 2 years old in 1999, and now I'm seeing, you got Asante Samuel Jr., you got Patrick Surtain Jr., you got all these freaking juniors running around, like it's crazy. So, we have Bradbury, we have Slay. I agree with you. That's like, that's boom, set it and forget it. Then at safety, Reed Blankenship in his second year. I think that there's some excitement around him. And then Terrell Edmonds that we signed this offseason from the Steelers. We haven't really talked about him too much. I know that he was a former, I believe, first-round draft pick maybe about 5 years ago. Never really panned out to his draft value, but that's still a player that the Steelers are like kind of stressing about replacing. So my point being is we might actually have a pretty decent secondary. So all of this is a very long-winded way of saying it might be the trenches that we look at. And if we're going defensive line or offensive line, hit me with some of your prospects, Colin, because this is where I'm kind of curious what we can do with with the players available.
Okay, so at 10, I am totally committed to Jalen Carter if he's there. I think us having Jordan Davis, us having Nakobe Dean, he did like an interview somewhere with John Clark today or yesterday, and he mentioned both those guys as leaders, as people that he looks up to. So all of the character concerns or
And
whatnot
you say this
with
because
Jalen
Jalen
Carter.
Carter's also a Georgia guy, and that's where Nakobe and Jordan Davis both went. Yep.
Yes. Sorry. But yeah, all of that being said, the character questions I think are nothing we need to be concerned about as Philadelphia Eagles fans. Other than that, on the D line, there are a couple other names I just don't think are going to be there. I mean, if Tyree Wilson's there, that's a guy I would go after, even though he's not really a fit. But I do think it's going to be heavy QBs, heavy DBs, running back. Everybody's saying Zay Flowers, the wide receiver, is going to be the first one off the board, and I feel like that means he's going to go top 10. I know it sounds crazy. Call it a hot take, call it what you want. But Zay Flowers from Boston, everybody's saying he's going to be the first off the board now. So
Great name.
if you want him, go get him. But I do think there are a lot of offensive linemen that teams are going to be wanting to move up for and wanting to shift. I think that's going to cause a lot of the shifting in the draft. Obviously, the quarterbacks will do what the quarterbacks do. The teams will move up into the top 5. They'll get their guy that they claim they want and they've been locked in on, and then we'll move on with the rest of the draft. But
Simply put.
but yes, but the offensive line depth in this draft, there are a ton of highly rated offensive linemen. If you look at like the top 50 prospects, a ton of offensive linemen. And I think it's because so many of them are versatile. A lot of them played multiple positions in college, which I don't think is something we've seen. Usually you have like one or two guys that are like, oh, they played center and guard, or they played tackle and had to play guard for injury concerns or whatever. But this year, I mean, there's the 3 guys I have on my list for offensive line targets. Paris Johnson from Ohio State. He's a guy that played both positions. He's 6'6", and he played offensive guard. Not sure if Jalen Hurts is going to be working with that, but hey, we did it with Dickerson, so it's definitely a possibility.
Can you just duck? I can't see. I can't just get down. Another ball to flex off of his head.
Drew Brees. Drew Brees was like 40, and people were still being like, Drew Brees is short. How are they going to play with 6'3" offensive line? It's like the guy is a Hall of Famer. Anywho, Peter Skoronski's another guy that I think if he's there at 10, I think the Bears, this sounds crazy because the Bears are awful, but they pick right in front of us. But I feel like our 2 picks are going to teeter a lot on each other. They might go Bijan. You guys mentioned earlier in the top 10 for Bijan, but I think 8 and 9 are really where we need to worry about him being taken. But same thing with Skoronski. I think the Bears could snatch him up. I think the Bears could snatch up Jalen Carter from us. So I think they might be someone that kind of causes a wave in our draft. But those are the guys I'm looking at 10. If they're not there, I'm honestly looking to trade back from 10. I'm not in the camp to trade up from 30 necessarily. I would trade back from 30. Love trading back.
Well, then would you trade up from 10? Would you trade up from 10 to be able to get Jalen Carter or one of these? I mean, is he your number 1 target right now?
I think all things being said, as much as I do like Bijan, and I'm totally fine with the luxury of Bijan. Yes, Jalen Carter is my guy. I think he's the number 1 prospect for going into the draft until the character concerns. The Bears traded out of 1 knowing like we still might get the guy that we want at 1 because they don't need the quarterback. So, yeah, I mean, I saw a mock today with Will Anderson slipping to 10, and I almost fell off the toilet. So I would obviously be. Oh, I'm so sorry. I would be obsessed with Will.
Eagles
Anderson
are on the clock.
Yeah, Eagles. Oh my gosh. No. Yeah. But no, yeah, I'm looking for, like, you're talking about linebacker. I mean, that's the only linebacker I'm taking at 10 is Will Anderson. He's an edge guy, but you saw what he can do in college. He played all over the field. But yes, Jalen Carter's my guy. Would I move up for him was your question. I don't know if we have the capital without kind of like to weighing the way to the risk. But if it came and how he works the magic, I think, yeah, if we had to move up a couple spots to get Jalen Carter,
What if we
why
trade?
not?
What if we trade Jake Elliott or Josh Elliott? Jake. What if we trade our kicker because he's pretty good? Maybe they would trade. Maybe they would swap picks with us.
Hey, this is you mentioned Joey Porter. You'd best believe I have Joey Porter Jr. on my Madden franchise Eagles.
Hey.
Just let Bradbury go, bring in Joey Porter. It's the
So
if
Joey Porter's dad was a linebacker, right? For the Steelers. Am I thinking of the right guy?
yes,
And so
yep,
so now I'm just picturing Joey Porter Jr. who plays corner. I'm just picturing him just being like a human truck stick, if that's even
he's a beast.
yeah.
I don't know if you guys have seen visuals of Joey Porter, but when you look at Christian Gonzalez, who's the clear cut like number one prospect, I think at corner in terms of just grading, Joey Porter makes him look like a high school
Mm.
JV player because he's just big and cut and long, and in a Penn State uniform, I guess he looks better. But that's
Hard to say. That's hard to say.
That's compared to an Oregon uniform, so that's saying a lot.
True.
But yeah, Witherspoon, Gonzalez, and Porter. Those are the three guys that everybody's interested in. I think Porter's more middle teens, middle first round. But hey, the Steelers are a team that could totally take him. I could see the commies taking him.
The commies.
But yeah.
Ali, I'm going to send this to you. I'd like to. Yeah, actually, no, please. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. Please cut me off. Please. No.
Please go. Well, in that case, no. I just, yeah. I obviously, I want to know. I want to know like your number one target as well. I want to know exactly, what is the best case scenario for the Eagles in this draft? How can you leave feeling over the moon about what the Eagles have done? So
I am a foundation type of guy, right? You build the foundation, it should be okay. Your skill position players come and go, but so long as your foundation is set, you're fine. Uh, I really like Skaronski, the O lineman. I feel like we've got enough guys who are about to graduate Jeff Stoutland University and go on to bigger things in their lives, and they're going to leave a pretty big impact. Lane Johnson. I mean, the stats every single year that pop up, when Lane Johnson is starting, the Eagles are, I don't know how many and
right.
very little losses versus when he's not, which is basically the inverse of that, right? We need to start looking at the future of our offensive line and can't necessarily rely on guys like Kelsey and Johnson to hold down the fort. I like Skaronski a lot. I think he had a pretty solid career in college. I'm pretty sure his draft, or I'm sorry, his combine stats were pretty solid as well. He went to Northwestern, so go Wildcats. Yeah, I
And
like
you know
this
what?
guy. I like this guy a lot.
The Eagles have not been shy about drafting offensive linemen in the top 2 rounds the past few years. So we took Cam Jurgens last year in the second round, which I think is kind of like that center guard kind of hybrid. So he'd be able to fill in for, he'll be future Kelsey most likely. That's how it seems. In 2021, this was another great draft, Devontae round 1. But then we took Landon Dickerson in round 2. So Cam Jurgens last year, Landon the year before. We took Jack Driscoll in the 4th round of 2020. We took Andre Dillard in the 1st round of 2019, who oddly, he was the highest draft pick of all of them. And he was also a left tackle, and he has been the least effective. But with that being said, the Eagles have done a great job of kind of keeping this ongoing, just always having 5 guys that they can put on the offensive line and set the quarterback up for success as long as everyone's healthy. So right now, looking at the backups, it's like, so you have Lane, Cam Jurgens, Kelsey, Dickerson, and Mailata all as your starters. But then you look at the backups. I mean, these are names that, I'm not used to seeing, which means that they're pretty fresh faces. So Fred Johnson, you got Sua Opeta, who's been here, Brett Toth or Brienne of Tarth. No, not the same. Brienne of Tarth could probably play offensive line. Josh Sills and Jack Driscoll. So a couple of familiar names, but we lost Samalu. We lost. There's probably one more guy that Dillard. We lost Dillard, who still provided some depth. So is there, I guess, a scenario? Again, I don't know how anything. None of us do, but is there a scenario where we can take one of these edge rushers or one of these great D linemen at 10? hopefully Jalen Carter. And then with the 30th pick, is there enough depth where we might be able to get, a really solid, offensive lineman for the future?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to the first round, I'm more in the camp of stay away from skilled players
Mm-hmm.
because they're just so hit or miss, right? Like, how many quarterbacks have been busts? How many wide receivers have been
Yep.
busts? I look at a guy like Skoronski's combine report. It's like strengths, balance, and overall pass pro talent stand out. Awesome ability to recover when beaten, very athletic, smooth movements in all areas, outstanding production across multiple seasons. Like, this is a guy, when I think about people who I want on my offensive line to block for Jalen Hurts, this is the guy.
Yeah, and if you're talking about the biggest holes that the Eagles have, losing Isaac Swamalo was huge.
Mm-hmm.
That's a gaping hole on the offensive line. He was definitely the least talked about of the crew, I think, just based off of name and just based off of. I mean, he was an earlier draft pick. He was around the same as Dickerson,
Third,
I think.
maybe
But
like a third round pick.
yeah, but getting Skoronski, he was a guy who played tackle in college. He's not someone who bounced around the line in college, but his build is more for the guard position. So he's fast enough to play tackle, but he's built like a guard. So that ultimately that's going to work out for the Eagles if they have to start him at guard and then eventually move him outside whenever Lane moves on. But having a core of Mulata, uh, Jurgens, Dickerson, and another offensive lineman added to that mix is something that the teams that are in the playoffs consistently every single year, like the Ravens, they have their own problems, but the Ravens and the Chiefs, they have young offensive lines that are going to be around for a while. So it is something to consider, and that's a luxury too. I mean, being able to
Yeah.
just take the first offensive lineman off the board, that's a luxury.
I just
So
I gotta believe that, talented like super talented running back and like subpar offensive lineman is worse than mediocre running back with stud linemen. It's like, I don't know. If I've said it once, I've said it a million times. It's like you got that offensive line working well, then you don't need, the best running back in the world in order to be really, really effective. So, man, I don't know. I feel like we've.
can we talk crazy hypotheticals like what we ultimately would love to happen? Because that's what season it is. Tis
Oh,
the season to just like
Colin,
make it work for your team.
hit me with the
talking dirty
craziest
over there,
crap.
Colin.
Well, like
Yeah,
I
settle
said, I
down.
saw Will Anderson slipping to 10, and I'm in my head, I'm like, that's not something that could possibly happen. But I'm someone that does mock drafts, no trades. So ultimately, I'm just picking what guy I think ends up on which team at the end of the day when it boils down on my mock drafts. I talk about trades. I'll discuss the trades, but I can't think of what they're going to possibly do or what. I don't like discussing hypothetical trades if I'm not talking about what they're actually trading. You see them in the mocks, it's like they swapped picks. Like, for what though?
Right.
So I'll say my ideal draft, and I think what'll make it a little sexy, a little comfy, still gives us like these guys are ready to go now. We trade back from 10
Mm.
for whatever reason, whether somebody wants to get Bijan, whether we don't have Skoronski ranked as high as we do, whatever. We trade back from 10, and then we just kind of wait, hopefully, to a team like, hold on, let me pull up my list real quick. I feel like I have some hypotheticals typed out. But to a team like, I don't know, let's say the Packers. The Packers are in a weird spot right now.
I
We
would
moved
say
back
so.
to, oh no, they just moved up. That'd be crazy if they move up again.
So they just
Okay.
moved up from what they were at 15. Now they're at
Do you
13.
have the order up in front of you?
I do. Yeah.
Who's 16?
16 is the Washington Football Commanders.
Commies.
The Commies.
All right, the Commies. Yeah, the Commies. They want Bijan Robinson because what do they have in their backfield? Antonio Gibson and Brian Robinson. That's kind of cool, I
They
guess.
can't
But
have two
Bijan
B
is
Robinsons on in one backfield. That's way too confusing. I don't care.
maybe we get B Robinson. Anyway, whatever. We trade back. Things happen the way they do. We get Nolan Smith. Nolan Smith is a guy that people are saying is the fastest linebacker or edge rusher of all time, but also he's undersized. Well, that's what Hassan Reddick is. So if we can get two of those, then I'm okay with it. And I think the Eagles defense will figure it out. Then obviously we need more things to happen in terms of players falling. But if they can go and somehow get Jahmyr Gibbs at 30,
Mm-hmm.
that would be just beautiful.
I
Just
I
beautiful.
think I'm there too. I'm still like, we don't need a running back, but like if that is the alternative to using the number 10 pick to draft a running back, if we were to able to get a stud at 30, I can't complain.
And this is a deep, deep, deep offensive line draft. The big boys go on for days. So the I love the idea of taking one of the top guys at 10, but I do think one of the top 5 guys will slip into the second round. I think, well, maybe one of our top 5 guys. But there's this guy from North Dakota State. I don't know if you've seen him. He started as a tight end. So if you look at his like freshman picture to now, he's very skinny and lanky, and then he does a Lane Johnson transformation where he just becomes this woolly mammoth, but he also loses his 2 front teeth. Uh,
Ooh, what?
yeah, so Cody Mock is his name. North Dakota State. I know we have our
Ooh,
feelings about that school, but if
feel
you look at the
gross.
kid, he's built like an offensive lineman. Like I'm sure that's what they told him when he came to play tight end. They were like, "Well, you're built to play offensive lineman." So I'd love to grab a guy like that in like the 62 area. Maybe he slips even deeper to 94. But I think a lot of that's the more you realize now too. As you see these mocks come out, it's like, okay, well, there's only so many guys you can fit in the first round.
Right.
And the more I make the mocks, I'm like, okay, well, there's only so many guys I can fit in the first round. So I'm getting to pick 30. I'm like, wow, look at this crop of players that I still have available to select for the birds.
Love it.
But yeah, I could talk about names for days when it comes to the rest of the draft. But I think if Gibbs isn't there at 30, another ideal guy would be Brian Breezy. He's a Clemson, another big burly white fella, but I don't think he'll be there at 30. He's a pipe dream, but he gives me like bigger Brandon Graham vibes. He's got short arms, broad shoulders, but he just gets after it.
Gets after it. That's what we love.
Gets after it.
That's what we love. So the draft is set to begin tomorrow night. Tomorrow is Thursday. Tonight is Wednesday. So that makes tomorrow Thursday. Things are going to get going around 8 o'clock. It is like anybody's guess as to what the heck is going to happen in the first round. You know, like we got 4 quarterbacks that could all go in the top 10. Who knows when Bijan's going to go? This is always super exciting. It's like it's a very fun thing to place all of our fandom into for a night, just because, you know, we're in that dead zone of football right now. So this is exciting. Ali, do you have anything planned for tomorrow night? What are you going to do to watch the draft? Is there any traditions that you typically have, or are you just going to keep it a normal night?
Normal night. I'm probably just gonna have it up on my iPad watching as my wife is. I'm gonna give her a break. She puts up with me for the entire football season, so I'm not gonna put this on her tomorrow night. But I'm gonna just have it up on my iPad. Pretty standard night for me. How about you?
Cool. I'll be doing the same thing. I'll be, it'll probably be background noise for the most part. And I'll start. I'm sure I'll start texting away once it's approaching the Eagles pick. Colin, what about you? You and Kara doing anything? You guys having any huge parties?
I'll be fully locked in.
Fully locked in.
Kara will be somewhere, but I'll be fully locked in. Usually, we started a tradition with my college roommates to just do like a Zoom call during the COVID. We started this tradition.
Oh yeah.
And during that time, for some reason, I didn't have a microphone, so every pick I had lights in my room, and I would just change the color, red or green, if I liked it or if I didn't like it. So that was my form of communication, and I've kept that a tradition. So
all right, well, tomorrow after the Eagles pick, I need you to send me either a green heart or a red heart. No, a green heart or a green square or a red square. I don't know. Text me something green.
You'll get it
if you like it. Send me something red if you don't.
I have one follow-up question. Well, final question, I should say, not follow-up. How long will Wawa take to come out with a Dijon mustard infused hoagie when we draft Bijan tomorrow?
I was wondering.
Bijan.
I was wondering if the Honey Badger and Honey Bijan both ended up on like the same team somehow. How much fun could one's marketing team have with so much honey?
If anybody's gonna do it, it's gonna be the Wawa.
It's gonna be the wow. Hey, look, it is like low hanging fruit. It's so easy. So like the guy has sandwich. What's the word? Promotions. What do they do? What do you do?
NILs?
No, like
No, he no longer needs NILs.
um. Oh man, yeah, Bijan. This is so crazy, man. Like this is running backs are always just so they just get people, they get everyone hot and bothered. So
I feel like I should just say the names that I have listed in case we didn't mention any of them and Howie takes one of them. So here I go.
spit them off as like
Bijan said it.
the ending
Jalen
credits.
said it. Peter said it. Yeah. Paris Johnson. Jameer Gibbs said it. Darnell Washington, a guy we didn't talk about, but if we did another like Zach Ertz, Goddard craziness like that, the giant tight end from Georgia who like is a sixth offensive lineman. Just a thought. Just a thought.
Just a thought.
Darnell Wright, Nolan Smith, and Brian Breezy. I won't name my later list, but that's my first round. If we get any of those guys, I will be happy.
Boom.
Very happy.
I love it. This has been super informative. Every time you said like, I don't know if you've seen so and so, like I don't know what any of these guys look like, and your descriptions of them with the short arms and the burly shoulders or the long manly.
I try to keep it basic.
I
think early in the episode I said he goes all the directions you need him to go. I believe I check me when you're editing, but I'm pretty sure I said that.
So like sometimes gravity just doesn't apply.
That's what it would say for my scouting report under Bijan is he goes all the directions you need him to go.
It was so descriptive. I can imagine it. That's all you need.
Right. All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for winging it with us yet again. Super excited for the draft tomorrow. Again, that'll be 8:00 tomorrow night. Everyone, let's enjoy whatever new toys the Eagles have in store for us. Colin, thank you again for sharing your genius with us. I can't wait to hear if any or all of your names that you mentioned get selected tomorrow. So looking forward to, having you back on eventually. Maybe we can, kind of debrief and see how everyone feels about it. But that's all we got for now, guys. Enjoy the draft. Go Birds. Peace out.